Hello everyone, my name is Jeff, and this is the Great Pretender Review. With me, as always, is Coby. Welcome to the show, Coby.
Happy to be here. Super excited. It's been a while, but we're back.
It's been a while, but we're back, and we're back with just a random anime. This one from Netflix. We might be doing a review series where we do animes that were Netflix originals. But anyways, yeah, Great Pretender. This came out in Japan in around June. And then it came out worldwide about a month ago, August 20th of this year. And so we're going to be doing a review of this show, and it is going to be a spoiler review, so if you don't want to be spoiled, turn back now. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
So with that out of the way, Coby, what did you think of this show?
I think I liked it. I liked its structure because I think con series is about a con man, obviously, and about a con group. Con series are just inherently interesting to me. And I think they're really hard to do right. But what I think the show did well is making these individual stories like in little blocks. So like it's not just one long con over the full season, which I felt like could have gotten really boring really fast. And we talk more about as we dive into everything about it. But overall, I think I liked it. It's interesting that we didn't see the whole thing because obviously on Netflix they only released like the first half of the show, and then there's more cases and stuff to like complete the season. But from what we saw, I liked. What do you think?
I think my sentiment is mostly the same. I think maybe I like it a little less than you because, you know, I'm the contrarian here. But overall, I liked it. It's an anime that, it's kind of anime that, I don't know, maybe is not made very often, or maybe I'm just an anime pleb and I don't see these things often, but I mean, first of all, it's an anime that's set pretty much all over the world. You know, I mean, when I think anime, I think of shows and movies set in Japan or in isekai, in like not like fantasy medieval, but not really Japan, or just like completely different worlds. You know, so yeah, it was interesting to see like LA in anime and to see in and out anime in and out. You know. But yeah, that was it was refreshing to see different settings come to life in this anime art form. And then in terms of the stories, like you said, like there's about 3 sub-stories, 3 arcs, I suppose you could call them. And I think the first arc is really good. And then the second arc is sort of whatever, and the third arc is fine.
It's really interesting because I think the show really pivots. Like if you watch that first arc, you think, all right, this is about a con group, right? Like this is what it is. This is the show. But then if you watch like the second and the third one, and like maybe even the tease at the end of the third one about where it's going from here, this really isn't a con show as much as it is like like a character driven thing about like trauma, about like the past. Because like the second and the third one, the Singapore sky and London snow, are like really character driven emotional things. It's a really big departure from I think the first story. And I honestly don't know if I like that or not. Like, it was hard for me to kind of wrap my head around that kind of shift in like, oh, this is the type of show that, you know, this is. And I gotta change my opinions. But maybe that's for the best. I don't know.
I mean, I slightly disagree because I think the first one was also character driven, except it was from the perspective of Edamame instead of the other characters. And I, like you, thought there was a bit of a pivot because I thought the show was going to be pretty much all about Edamame and like his struggle and like his character development, because I think he is the most interesting character of the show, honestly. I mean, that first arc where we kind of learn about him and his background and his past and like how he came to be the con man that he is and how he got roped into this great con that he maybe didn't really want to be a part of. I thought that was really interesting. And then when it pivoted and we saw, you know, suddenly the second series, it's about what's her name again? Cynthia.
Second one's about I think Allie. I think that's or
Allie. I'm totally wrong.
The third one is
Abigail. Wait, her name's Abby.
That's what I said. I said, wait, is her name Abby?
You said Allie.
Oh yeah, her name's Abby. I meant Abby. The third one's about Cynthia.
Yeah, so that's right. So the second one I thought was like when it started talking about the other characters, and then I think the second one's when I realized, oh yeah, this is like you. I started to think, oh yeah, now this is going to be about more character driven, but it's going to be about other characters rather than Edamame. I didn't really think Abby's story was done very well, just because she's very closed off and like she wasn't really a part of the story a lot. It was mostly about everyone else pulling the strings. And then the third one I thought was kind of a little bit better because I guess Cynthia was slightly more active in that one, but it was still about the other characters pulling the strings to get, you know, it was basically Edamame trying to like get everyone. He is the hero of the show. Yeah. Like he is trying to get everyone to open up and like, ooh, face your past and make things better and whatnot. But
yeah,
I still would have maybe liked it if it was mostly about him, and because it's kind of sucks that he, like, you know, he tried to leave the life behind in the second season or the second arc, and then they just dragged him back in.
Yeah, for really no reason. That's what I was going to say. That's really like my first big problem with the show, because I think the way that the first one, I think we can go through and we can break up each one after this, but I think overall the progression between like 1, 2, and 3 just didn't mesh well with me, because I agree with that he left in the end one. He went to jail to face his crimes because he didn't want to be a conman. He was in jail for 2 years. Like that's a very emotional thing, but then like afterwards they draw him back into that life, and then he's just in it, like he doesn't really care. And I get it that like he's only confessing for his crimes that he did the wrong ones, you know, and that's why he wants to go to jail. So he doesn't really mind, you know, stealing from like the rich people, which they do. But it just felt a little odd that they wouldn't explore the fact that he definitely did get out of the game, but they play it more of as a joke, just like, haha, you're on our island now, and now you're our mechanic, and like, now he's here. It's like, that's really messed up.
Yeah, it really is. Like, it basically steals the character growth from him in a way. Like, I think if this show was just that first series, it probably would have been fine. And I thought it was, but then I realized there was more, and then I was like, oh, there's more to the show. And then yeah, I then once he got dragged back into the life of conning again in the second arc, I thought it was gonna be all about like him trying to like escape again, and like him trying to like maybe get revenge on the people that like tricked him to going back to that life. But no, he just kind of plays along with it, which, you know, it kind of sucks. It's kind of a bit disappointing, a bit backwards, I guess.
Yeah, but then like that's the thing, because it's that's why my feelings are conflicted about it, because like what they did, like that pivot, is probably the smartest thing they could have done. Because here's my problem with con shows overall: is it's like you're expecting the big twist, right? Like you're expecting everything at the end to be like, oh, like this is how they did it. Everything is actually all part of the con. Like everything you think you're seeing is wrong, and there's going to be something at the end that reveals like actually, you know, like all the pieces fall into place. And they really did that. Like they went full force into that first one in that first in the LA story, basically. In Hollywood, I forgot the name of the Los Angeles Connection. That's what it is. It's like they really double down on that. So it's like any story after that, if they did do more crazy con stuff with this group of like 100 con people of stuff like that, it's going to get a little like, okay, you know, nothing's going to go wrong because you've come to expect that. What's the twist? Things are going to turn out things. So by pivoting and by focusing more on this character stuff, whether or not I agree with how well they did it with Abby and with Cynthia, that was probably the smart thing to do, because it does create more interest in like the show, and doesn't have me like, all right, so this is going to come into play later, and it's all going to be a twist, and they're all going to be working for this guy type thing. So I don't know. I didn't like it as much as the first one, but I respect what the show did, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the first season, like, it pulled off all the tricks, but the downside is it could only do that once.
Exactly.
And so I guess you're correct in saying that, yeah, like, they can't just keep doing that over and over again, so instead they focus on the characters. Now, that being said, there are still, like, small twists at the end, but they're not as impactful as the first one, because it's like, once they reveal, like, for example, at the end of the second series, it turned out that they were going to trick that rich guy all along by just using like a projector screen to make him think that whoever they wanted to win won. Basically, he wasn't actually watching the whole thing. That was like the reveal for the second one,
right? And
then the reveal for the third one was that Edamame actually gave him the real painting instead of the fake one, because he really liked the fake one more than the real one, because he saw the work that went into it. So they still have like these big reveals, but they're not as impactful. And honestly, it's like they have to be in there. So it's kind of like they still kind of have to play into the sort of like con cliches, you know, oh, big reveal twist at the end, but also like, you know, make really good character moments. And yeah, I guess it's up to debate then if they were done well or not, which I lean more towards
They were okay.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. They were okay. So I guess we can how about we just go into each arc then?
I was going to just say the same thing.
All right, so like starting with the first one. The first one, when I saw it, I was really drawn into it. I thought, I mean, everything from like the art style to the music. I mean, that opening is awesome. I always
love
watch that
opening.
one.
It's such a good opening.
Yeah, it's great. It's jazzy. It's groovy. It's worthy of like the opening of like I don't know, like a movie or something, or like even like a real like professional high budget live action TV show or something like that. It's just that good. So yeah, anyways, great stuff, great style. That's I guess the best way I can describe my experience watching the first series is that this anime is really stylish.
It really is. It has flair to it, and it just the way that it draws you into the story is great. I mean, that's a great opening. Him hanging from the Hollywood sign, being like, "What's happening?" And then we go back to where everything was. It's like you're immediately invested in this guy's story.
Yeah, and it's a good story. And they kind of gradually introduce all these characters in very competent ways. You know, we start with Adamame. He's a con man. And then he just kind of, through a weird series of events, he just ends up in like America. But it's not like super forced. It doesn't seem super sudden. It's very gradual, and it's kind of just basically the consequences of his own actions. Essentially, is him conning the greatest con man of all, who cons him into taking him to America. Because I guess we probably don't know Laurent's full intentions even after all these arcs, but maybe he brought him on just because he thought it was a good con man. I don't know. But
yeah,
anyways,
Laurent is like the wild card because you need a character like that. Because I mean, that's a great setup for everything. It's like you have this cocky Edamame is what Laurent calls him. Edamame, thinking he's the best, Japan con man in the world, and then obviously he meets someone who's much greater than him, and then through a series of events he comes to America, and that's like the first big twist, right? That's like you find out that actually this was all orchestrated by Laurent. It wasn't really just random happenstance that he wound up in America. Like everything was planned to get him to America, and I think that's how the first episode ended, and that's a pretty cool opening episode of just like, all right, more's going on here. You gotta expect the unexpected with this.
Yeah, and it takes you for a wild ride, like from beginning to end. There's the little mini twists, like well, they have that little gamble where like who can con the most money out of a certain person. And it turns out, this person is actually a famous Hollywood producer, and also he is buying drugs from us. And then it's like, oh, great. And then it's like, Laurent gives that little candy thing to Abby. And it's like Abby goes off the wall. And it's like, oh, well, actually, that was an act. And actually, Abby's in on the joke or in on the con. And it just reveals all these little things step by step. And then it also adds in some sweet character development as well with Edamame. Not only with his past, but also with the Hollywood producer's bodyguard.
Yeah.
There's just a lot of great little elements to that. It built its way up perfectly to the very end when it's revealed that it was everyone was in on it, including, the famous FBI agent person is actually just a con woman. And it was just a really satisfying ending. And
some of that I do have questions about because that's always the big thing. You're expecting the big reveal where, especially when Laurent and Abby get totally just ruined by all the guns and bullets, you think like, all right, you're like, okay, this is part of it, right? Like you're just wondering how it's all going to come together. But how much did they actually plan? Did they plan for Edamame to pull the gun on who's turned out to be Cynthia, pull the gun on Cynthia and like threaten out, and then for the Hollywood producer to blow up the entire factory? Like, was that all part of it? Because for a minute I didn't think so, but then when you think that the two men who came in and said this place is full because of a faulty radiator or something, was like, were they trying to put that in his head so that he blows it up and they leave? Like, I didn't understand the exact minutia of their plan. Besides that, everybody was in on it.
I think that part they didn't plan for, because the people who said that the radiator was full, like, who were those people part of the con as well?
There was a scene right before, like beforehand, you see two well-dressed men who we can now assume who is part of the crew, like go up to them while they're sitting on the job or something, and then so it seems like they went to them and said, "Hey, go to him and say this thing," and then then he blew up the place, and thankfully didn't kill anybody.
Yeah, I don't know. I actually didn't even think about that. So to me, it worked because that totally flew over my head. Passed the fridge test for me.
You know what I really liked about this? My favorite part of it is because I think there's a tendency. I hate con movies and con things that rely on already established things. Like something that I think the second one and even the third one are like kind of guilty of. Like the second one was like Abby is an expert pilot. You know, like that's like a skill that she already has that makes her one of the best pilots in the world, which allows her to be involved in the story. I don't really like when the con stories do that, but what I liked about the first one is that like when Edamura decided to come back, he studied all the guys' movies beforehand and took notes, and then that was how he was able to convince the guy that he was on their side. That's like smart planning, and I like seeing the con men actually put in the work in order to do their con instead of just like, oh, I have this skill, like, oh, I actually did watch all your movies beforehand and I was a big fan. No, we actually saw him put in the work to know all these details, which was cool.
Yeah, totally agree. And that might be the only time that they do that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, so there's that where he basically gains the trust of the producer by watching all his movies, which I guess they all star Steven Seagal for some reason. Sure. And then the second one, so in the second one, Abby just knows how to fly right off the bat, although they do say that like she doesn't like flying, so they kind of force her into it, but we don't see her practicing up to that point. So it might as well just be an ability that she already had, which is, you know, basically how it was introduced. And then the third one, what skill do they have in that one? I mean, they basically just brought in a whole new character to do the painting. That's most important part of the con. Yeah. So yeah, this is the only part of the season where we see con men doing actual on the ground work to make a con work, and so yeah, I appreciate that as well, and it shows how smart Edamame really is.
He is,
you know what
really showed me as why he was so smart is I think in the first episode, it's my favorite moment in the whole series. It's when he's first running away from the mansion. He knows there's a gate like really far away that he can't climb. While he's running away, he picks up a handful of dirt. When he gets to the gate and can't open it, the guard who runs up behind him, he throws the dirt in the guard's face and then uses that body to jump over the fence. Like that's just the type of planning that takes. Like when he was running away, he grabbed the dirt because he knew he was going to have to use that to get over the gates. Like it's just a small little moment, and I loved it. And that was my favorite moment. That was when I was like, this show is going to be awesome. But then there wasn't a whole lot more moments like exactly like that, but it was still cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's on the spot, thinking ahead, con thinking as well. Like because he kind of feigns going over the fence. Like he knows what they're going to do once he gets there, and he just takes advantage of that by, you know, using dirt, pocket sand.
Pocket sand, yeah.
So yeah, anyways, first arc, good, really good. I feel like they put a lot of their energy into this one, and it really shows because it's, I think in my opinion, definitely the best of all the three that we've seen so far. So now on to second arc. I think this one was my least favorite one, again, because it revolves around Abby. And this is just kind of a gripe I have about a lot of shows in anime where, you know, they kind of, there's a character who is like really withdrawn and doesn't want to show their emotions, and that's all they are. But we try to the show tries to make you care about them through either flashbacks, which is what this show does, or they try to do other things. But for me, it's almost always never effective because that kind of character to me, might as well not be a character at all because they are very, very unlikely to engage in a situation in a way that you don't expect. They're very unlikely to engage at all. They're always going to say the same thing, like, oh, fuck you, fuck this. Yeah. So it's like there's no nuance to that character. And I guess I'm not against characters that don't have nuance. It's just that this particular character is just unlikable to a fault, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think her character never really clicked for me. I get it, she has the trauma from her past and everything that she's dealing with, and it was interesting to see her presented with Lewis, who's there, and she has to forgive him and all that stuff. All that stuff on paper is fine. I just, it's not as interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, and even the con itself it's kind of it's cool, but maybe it's too. It's maybe too fantastical, I suppose. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna con this guy who who basically rigs these plane races in Singapore with his brother, and that's how we're gonna make his money. We're gonna take his money that way. I guess it's just a bit too removed from the more grounded and sort of realistic heist that they did in the first one, which is very simple but very effective.
And it's especially hard because, like, I get it if you try to, because in the first one established, like, they stole $110 million from that producer. That's a lot of money. Like, you know, so it's like they don't. So like, I think when you hear, I think they get up to like 25 million in this new one, which is, you know, not a small chunk of change, but it's still like not a whole lot compared to what they had before. So then you kind of have to turn to like, as long as we're not doing this just for the money, we're doing this to take down a bad guy, and those guys are bad. It's like, but I don't feel like they hit that hard enough to be like, this is why we're doing this, is because we're not about taking the 25 million. We're about breaking this guy's empire down completely. I don't think they did enough to sell why they chose like these people and like why they were after him. And sure, that guy was garbage, but maybe because I didn't quite understand exactly what their con was, or like why the guy would end up betting. Like, I don't understand. Can you explain can you explain the Singapore Sky con to me?
Okay, so, well, first of all, I got to say, I totally agree, because the guy in the first series was definitely a douchebag. I mean, and it's very relevant as well. I mean, he's a Hollywood producer, takes advantage of women, also, you know, has everyone in his pocket, and he sells drugs, basically takes advantage of
he was involved
people.
in like sex trafficking. I think there was that really like dark moment in that episode where just like, yeah, he uses women and he sells them, and then they're like, there's a flash of them all dead. It's like, yeah, this guy needs to go down and lose everything.
Yeah, as opposed to this guy who he's like an oil baron or something, but he also he rigs these plane races so that his brother always wins, and then I guess he's also sexist, but that's like definitely not as bad as this guy who literally just like, you know, gets girls addicted to drugs and then has them die.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, they tried their hardest to make this guy like a really big asshole, and he was a real big slimy like creep and stuff. But just like, I didn't feel like, just, I knew he needed to be taken down, but it's like, especially compared to, you know, the sex trafficker in the first one. So I was just thinking I missed something.
Yeah. Okay. So the con was they're gonna get Abby. They're basically manipulating this guy to get Abby to the finals. And then because he loves money, I guess, they set up this underground casino, and he loves money, so he fixes their races, so he's going to bet all his money and win every single time, basically double or triple his money every time, or whatever the odds are. And so they're gonna lure him in that way, and then basically make it so he loses all his money in the final race. By some turn of events, he's gonna bet all his money, go all in on the last race, because he knows how the last race is gonna turn out. And then they're going to like flip it on him and then take his money that way. So that was basically the con of the second series. But it was really long and drawn out too. I think it didn't need to be as long as it did. I think that's another problem.
Because you know why? It's because they pulled the con like really at the very beginning of Singapore Sky. Like there was that very quick con at the very beginning where it's like the boxing ring that they manipulated and everything. And they stole that money from the guy to like help the Cynthia's like old friend. It's like, that's literally basically the same con that they pull. Like, it's like everything. And they did it in about 5 minutes instead of 5 episodes.
Yeah, exactly. They could have just done that. But no, they drew it out with like a bunch of flashbacks and a bunch of setup, which, yeah, I think the pacing of this one also really took a hit and really affected my liking for this one. Because the first series was just so snappy.
Yeah.
You know, it was just like, it was well paced, it was engaging, and then for this to be the follow up was it was noticeably slower and not as engaging.
And you know why? You know, I think there was really only one moment that like really took me out of it. Just like, okay, it's not working for me, because it's kind of a lazy thing. It's when the two brothers their top mechanic has to go home because there's a fire, right? Like, because I guess they orchestrated a fire or something. So then it was just like. So then as soon as he says, "I'm sorry, I have to go," and then he leaves, 2 seconds later, Lewis's wife comes. It's like, "Hi, oh, I didn't know you were here. I'm here with my brand new mechanic." Like, everything like that. All right, gotta go. It's just like, all right. I wish there was more con stuff, in order to do it. So it's like, it's not as obvious. Just like, okay, they planned that to like move things along, you know?
Yeah, it was definitely lazy. It was And it really doesn't even make much sense if you think about it, because it's like, that could easily just not work. Like, I mean, you know, they do it with the assumption that they're going to, you know, they do it with the assumption that they're going to lure them in that way, but it easily could just been like, oh, whatever, we'll just find another mechanic.
Yeah, it's those instances like that, like after he allegedly fixed the plane, and then the guy went around, and the brother's like, that doesn't look any faster, and then those fanboys came up to him just like, wow, you did so much better than you normally do. Wow, can we get you? Who did that before? It's like, that should be a little suspicious because it's so immediate that like resolution. It's just like, but I felt like they were trying to really crunch a story in when they could have had time to spread it out.
Well, and that also kind of adds to the idea that like Laurent is always in control, because he's basically the leader of the con organization, even though everyone says they hate him, because he's always working in the background, always doing something. So it's almost like he has superpowers. Like nothing can go wrong. Like he has all the people and money at his disposal to do anything to anybody, which also kind of takes away from the tension, because in the first series, like, you don't really know that. You don't really know how far his influence spreads. But then when you've realized that it's basically everyone and everything's under control, it's kind of like, I mean, the only thing that's not under his control are like the people that are under him. And even then, it's just like, well, they're the main characters, so things are going to work out. So there's never a sense of like, oh, this might go wrong for them, which was, I think, part of the first series. The part of the first series' appeal was that it was kind of nail biting in a way. I was like, oh god, like, because like every episode he just got deeper and deeper into the situation where like he says he's like, he made the drug, and then now the guy wants him to make the drug in front of him, but now he's like, oh well, I don't want to work here, I want to work in a better place. So they make the actual lab, and then I guess Edamame learns how to actually make a weird drug. Anyways, I'm talking too much about the first series.
No, but because I think that draws into the problem that carries over to this. It's like that first one did have the thing of Laurent's always in control. All those things at the end reveal, like, yep, all part of the plan. Like, that was actually we planned for you to hold a gun to Cynthia's head. Hopefully you didn't shoot her. Hopefully you're not crazy. But the second one had that element too of like Laurent was always in control. So that's why I think what they tried to do was smart. It's like they made it not so much like Laurent covered the con side of things and handled that perfectly. The true test and what made Edamame the hero of this show is because while nobody was really focusing on Abby, he was. Edamame got Abby out of her shell and got her to help with her trauma a little bit. And so that helped drive it, where probably Laurent never focused on that, even though it's kind of applied at the end, just like, let's see how they get out of it. Like, he wanted him to help her, you know, but it's like, those are like the two elements of the story. That's how Edamame could factor into a story where everything was already all planned out by Laurent by changing the mind of a character that Laurent was overlooking, like someone on their own team. So it's like, again, on paper, great. In execution, it was all right.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think you and I agree. Second series, not as good as the first one. And now we go on to the third one. Does this one redeem the second one? And my answer to that is, again, sorta. I think it's definitely better. I think Cynthia's background and her story was a lot more engaging, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I just like Cynthia more than Abby.
Yeah.
She's just more interesting. She's more sassy. You know, she has more personality. So when you learn more about her past and about how, her past relationship with this artist guy and how she wanted to be an actress, and I also like the ironic twist of it as well, which I thought they were going to address, but I guess it's more appropriate that they didn't. Was that her ex-boyfriend started making forgeries when he wanted to be a real painter, but Cynthia wanted to be an actress, and now she's basically forging identities herself. You know.
Oh, I never made that
connection.
I thought that's nice.
Yeah, I thought there was like a beautiful irony in that, so I thought that was pretty cool.
I am going to admit a very deep, dark secret to you, Jeff. I didn't realize until probably a few, it took me too long to realize that what we were witnessing with Cynthia and Thomas was in the past. I thought that was happening simultaneously. Like when they first meet the art connoisseur, like at the market, when he gets Thomas to like make his forgeries, I was just like, oh, and Cynthia's like, oh, I was like, oh no, she's gonna recognize Thomas from, the the art appraiser's going to recognize Cynthia from like the art gallery which you bought at. It's like, oh no, it's like, wait a sec. So it's like, why? Oh, wait. I think I missed. Oh, that makes so everything. But there's a flashback and how we got there, and that's why they're after him and all that stuff. It's like that makes more sense. So I don't know what I missed, but like in the very first flashback thing, I just thought Thomas was just another Mark, and Cynthia was like working in Nice during this time. You know, just as a way to like factor him into like they were trying to get a painter on their side. But
yeah, which totally would have made sense actually, because that's how they do things. And you know, to be fair, like there isn't really much to, I guess once Thomas is in the equation and once you see that like the art guy doesn't recognize Cynthia, like maybe that's kind of when you're supposed to know that is a flashback, because before that, you know, in terms of visual differences between Cynthia then and now, she looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Maybe her hair is a little different. I don't really notice though, but yeah, I mean, I guess it could be forgiven.
But it's so stupid because I should have realized, because like, you know, it's like Abby had her flashbacks like in the war in the second one, so like Cynthia was probably gonna have flashbacks. I mean,
right.
Took me a while. I got there eventually, but it took me longer than I'd care to admit.
Yeah, and I guess my criticism of this one is that it's maybe a little too coincidental, because, you know, okay, so this time Edamame is in France and he's working at like a sushi restaurant. And he's working at a boarding house, and the boarding house is gonna close, so he needs to sell this painting, which they think is like a whatever painting, and they put a fake price on it, but the art guy buys it for that price, knowing that it's actually an amazing painting. And it just so turns out that this one art director guy is also the same guy that screwed over Cynthia in her past life. So it's a lot of the stars aligning just for Cynthia to get her own plot line, which, you know, we don't really get in the past two series. I mean, I guess the first two series were basically like, oh yeah, these are assholes, we're gonna scam them. This one was kind of like, oh, we just so happened to run into the guy that, you know, Cynthia doesn't like, so now we're gonna scam this guy. So it was a little bit forced, I guess.
Yeah, I'm of two minds about that. I agree. Just like I don't know which one I like more. Like, because obviously to get, I liked the beginning plot, how it started with Edamame making a mistake that was different than what we've seen before. It's like he screwed up and now he's got to fix his mistake, and it just coincidentally ties in with Cynthia's backstory. And then it's like what would I have preferred to see? Would I have seen them like seek out these bad guys, or am I fine with them getting a blast from the past and continuing on the story like coincidentally? Like, I don't know where to suspend my disbelief of like how much I like that, and how much I was just like, well, it would have been better if it was. I liked because it needed to be a coincidence in order to make Edamame's mistake a legitimate mistake, something that he needed to fix, and which ties into like the themes of like the ending. But again, I agree with what you said of just like, is it just really coincidental about like, oh, this is the art critic that screwed me over in my past life and my former love who ate a lot of beans.
Yeah, and not only that, but this amazing art piece, which was lost to the world, is just hanging up at the boarding house that Edamame's staying at. So it's like, well, what the fuck? But I mean, other than that, yeah, I mean, I think this one was done slightly better, because I think it did better with what the second one was trying to do, which was create a more personal angle for the con. You know, the second one was like Abby. Well, actually, I don't even know if that's true, because the second one was about Abby and then this pilot guy who doesn't even come in until like halfway through. Whereas this one is, you know, directly the guy that they're scamming is the guy that scammed or took advantage of Cynthia and her ex-boyfriend. So yeah, this one definitely had a better personal angle to it, which I like. And then in terms of the con itself, it was kind of meh. It wasn't as exciting. I think as the series goes on, the cons are just going to be kind of like this, where it's like, yeah, whatever. The cons are not the most important thing anymore, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, I guess they can't really do that anymore after the first series. But yeah, overall, I think this one is better than the second one.
So now what I just learned from like 10 minutes ago is my favorite thing to do. Jeff, what was the con in this one?
All right, what was the con? Okay, so here's the con. The con of this one was that because he bought this painting, this super famous painting, and because he really likes it. Oh, okay, so first of all, this guy is working for this lady, and this lady likes him for who knows why.
She's
like,
lonely.
Who knows? Yeah, she's lonely, I guess, but like, come on. I mean, she's rich. She could do way better than this fucking frog-looking ass motherfucker. Like, okay. Anyway, so she likes him, and he's taking advantage of her money because he basically, because I guess he does like art, but he's using her money to get the art. So he auctions off the art, and he basically, since he's the guy that's auctioning it off, he kind of rigs it to where she gets it all the time. Basically, just like as soon as she makes a bid for it, he just goes, oh wow, that's so much, and then sold. So anyways, they use it to their advantage by basically, instead of, because he doesn't directly own the art, he auctions it off, this person ends up buying it, which means he doesn't really spend that much money on it, it's just all this one woman. Anyway, so Laurent instead buys the painting, and then because this guy loves art and he wants that painting so much, they again, it's another underground, instead of it being like an underground shady gambling den, it's an underground shady art auction. Yep. So in now, in a castle, which I guess they have connections with someone with the castle. Anyways, so Frogman and his mistress go in an attempt to get the painting back. But what they're gonna do is they're actually gonna like bid him to an extraordinarily high amount, and then that's how they're gonna con him by selling him a fake painting. But this fake painting is actually the same. I mean, it looks indiscernible to the real painting, so maybe that part of the con is kind of whatever. But then they're also going to reveal to the mistress that he's been taking advantage of her. So by him actually buying the painting with his own money, he does not get to use her as an out. And so now he's broke with a fake painting.
But the twist is not a fake painting. But it's like that's the actual execution, the actual reveal of like how they did it. Like on paper, that's all fine. But it's like the way they did it is like they were happy that the rich woman excused herself for a moment. It's like I don't know how they could have planned for that. It's like leave the room after some of that. And then when she's outside, that's when they tell her, it's like, actually, you should hear this. And then that's when they have the recording of him being a jerk and a big old frog face. And then their plan is to go back in and say to the guy, she's not feeling well, but feel free to bid as much as you want.
Yeah, a lot of things have to work for these cons to go through, because I think, first of all, you know, those two older guys in the con, they have to loudly proclaim, like, oh, I think this is gonna go for 50 million pounds, 50 million pounds. And I guess they have to know that she doesn't have 50 million or whatever it was. So then she needs to go outside to call her butler to get 20 more million, but that's actually the perfect time to tell her about all what's going on. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know, you know, but I guess that's with like a lot of cons, right? Like,
sure.
Like a lot of things have to work out to actually get to the end.
And there were some small flourishes that were nice. It's like it wasn't just all easy. Like how they were able, they filled it so every painting that the guy like appraised is like, oh, this would be 20. This is 20,000, and then people were buying like 200,000, like 200,000 to like really like make him nervous about like, holy crap, these guys are buying at an exorbitant price. Like what's happening here? Like everybody's doing it, to like throw him off guard. Like that was a small touch. That was nice.
Yeah, and it was also I do like the moment when Cynthia kind of went off script and started like bidding for it higher and higher and higher to goad this guy into like bidding basically an exuberant amount of money, but also doing it so that like, because there's that whole point of the flashback when it was like, yeah, you see, Thomas, your paintings can become just as much as these other paintings. So I thought that was kind of sweet.
It was, and then we can switch over to like Thomas's arc overall. Like I thought it was kind of nice. Like once I figured out what was going on, it was kind of nice that his story, and you find out that he was in debt because he bought back all of his forgeries because he was so ashamed. It's like that's like a very sad thing.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but it's redeeming for him in that way, and it's also redeeming that he gets to paint something that's worth millions of dollars while also tricking the guy that fucked him over. It was all, yeah, it was a very poetic justice.
And something that wasn't like spoke about the relationship was like how it ended. It's like, yeah, you can tell like the romance was still there, but I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but just like you could tell that they both still like really cared about each other, but their lives were so different that it just wouldn't work out now. Like they weren't the same, so they had to, you know, continue on their separate ways, but they still ended on great terms. I think another show would have been like, it was kind of like a, because Edamame said like, oh, he's still in love with you, and he's still like waiting for you because he's still in his apartment eating 75-cent cans of beans. And then at the end, it's like, I think a lesser show would have had them like get together or something, or share one last, you know, fit of passion. But it's like, I just think they recognized at the end that they weren't the same people, that they moved on from that section of their lives, and they were different. I thought that was a nice little flourish.
Yeah, it was very mature, and it hit that bittersweet note because, you know, it's like I watched that and I was like, oh man, they didn't get together, but you know, it makes sense. It also makes sense from the sense of like, well, if they did get back together, then Cynthia wouldn't be a con woman anymore, and then she wouldn't be part of the gang, and then she'd be kicked out of the show. Which they definitely need her around more, so she can't be in a relationship right now. The show needs her, basically.
Exactly. Maybe at the end, the show like go back to him or something.
Yeah, maybe we'll see.
So let's get into like the ending of that, which is like it just proved what edamame does for the show. It's like it's provide the heart, right? It's like his role in this con wasn't to put these things. It was to realize about these paintings, about to show the true art of these paintings.
Yes, the true value of paintings is how much work you put into them, or something.
I like this, but I have two problems with it. The first is that they basically gave Frog Guy a legitimate painting. He has the real one. He could sell that for a good amount of money.
yeah, he totally could. I mean, even if he got the forgery and the real thing are nearly identical. And since nobody knows about the fact that there is a forgery, he could still, even if they gave him a fake painting, he could have still sold it for a huge amount of money.
Yeah, and then, so that was my first problem. My second problem is I loved his reasoning for keeping it because Thomas poured his heart and soul into this painting and made a masterpiece, and it deserves to be cherished into a place where it's really going to have value and for people to appreciate it. And I love that. But then they're like, you know what? Let's just tell people this is the real thing. Like, Thomas spent his whole life hating his forgeries about, like, so why would they not just say this is, like, a Thomas painting, you know? Like, this isn't his thing. Don't lie to the people that this is the actual real one that you have hanging in it, because you're going to get busted that way because the art guy has the real one. So you don't have to do that. I just wish they would have focused more on just, like, this isn't a forgery. I'm fine with it being the forgery, but I appreciate the art and the soul behind it because that's what makes true art. And it had the underlying message of like all art is subjective and we should not be paying millions and millions of dollars for art.
Well, I mean, that also would have solved the problem with him having a real painting, is if they said, oh yeah, this is just like a Thomas painting or whatever, people could probably, you know, doubt whether or not the art guy of Frogman's painting was real too. Because if there is a painting like this out there that's just a copy, could there be more copies? And then that would definitely throw a bone in the wrench of like, well, he could just sell this painting again for millions of dollars when there is a perfectly good painting here that looks exactly the same. So that would have solved that issue too. But yeah, they kind of effed that up.
Yeah, which I get. Maybe it's just like the story that worked better, but it's just like I would have preferred the other thing.
Yeah. Well, it seems like we talked each other into hating this show.
Yeah, I like it less after this conversation.
Me too.
But there's still more to talk about the very ending, because it kind of because we find out once again that Cynthia kind of suggests that Lawrence set this whole thing up.
Yeah, and so maybe the next series will resolve all that. I think it definitely will, because well, he says something like, men are such terrible things, isn't that right? Dolores, and he's looking at like this ring or something. So, ooh, who's Dolores? Is it his past love? Oh,
yeah, he has to be the next one, right? Like,
yeah, he's the only one left in the crew that doesn't have a flashback, and he's the most enigmatic of the squad. And I am interested to see what his story's about. So, hopefully that delivers on all the things that we loved about the first one, although I doubt it. But,
so we like the show less, but we're still interested in it.
Yeah, I think overall the show is good. Not very good. I just think it's maybe even just fine. The show's fine. I don't know. It's like maybe it's just okay. I don't know. We'll just have to see.
I don't even know. I just have to see how the last. I assume there's probably like 2 more like cases. I would imagine that would fit the season, maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe even just 1 more, because it could just be, you know, because if Laurent is the last one, then they could just have him be the last one and that's it. But I'm not sure.
I think it says there's 23 episodes right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean that would make sense too. Have 1 little mini arc for Laurent and then like 1 big one for all of them at once.
The next one is all one There's 9 episodes in the next one.
Oh, well, okay then. Well, guess we'll just see.
I guess we'll just see. My question to you is, what language did you watch this in?
I watched the dub. I watch dub anime now if the dub is okay. I know there are people out there that say subs better than dubs, and in some cases, yes. Back then, early 2000s, mid 2000s, yes. But now I think there's some really good dub voice actors out there that entire casts of them, so that's why I just watch dub whenever it's good. But anyways, yeah,
I watched the dub too, but it's like when I first started, because I just did its natural thing, it was subbed, but then it was like really tough because when they started, because there was like a whole language thing where it's like where they were speaking English, but it was that classic anime English where it's like not very good English, and it's just like I couldn't understand what they were saying, so it's like I had to switch over to the sub. And I was like, I don't know if I'll be able to understand what's happening, because like Laurent was like a French dude who was speaking English with a Japanese French accent, and I was just like, I can't, I'm not getting it, so I had to switch over to the sub, and I'm thankful to switch over to the dub, which I thought was done pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, even the Japanese English was like, still very heavily accented, but still understandable.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's it, right, Coby?
I think so. I like the ending. Queen, Great Pretender. That was. Music in the show was great. Visuals, great.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of pop songs in there that I didn't really like. There's like that rap song in the first series, and then like that weird pop song in the third one.
And the romantic song during Cynthia's and Thomas's like love story. It's like they kept playing over and over. It's like, okay, I didn't like that one very much.
And it was weird too, because I couldn't tell if they were speaking English until like a few lines in. It was just, I don't know, it was weird. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about just weird like pop songs, especially if it's like a repeating pop song. They just play it over and over again throughout the whole mini arc. I'm not about that.
Yeah.
Just give me some nice instrumentals.
Give me some jazz. That jazz was nice.
Yeah, more jazz. All right, Coby, would you like to sign us off?
Sure. You've been watching this on Nerd Blaze. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll be back at a future point with another Netflix original anime, because this was fun, and I enjoyed talking with you. Go check out some of our other videos. We do a lot of other reviews and some cool stuff, and I don't know how to sign off because I haven't signed off in a while. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.